I'm sure a lot of you guys remember the old ceremonial hunting tradition of eating the heart out of the first animal you kill. Meat from those organs are among the most nutrient-rich foods on the planet. You can get those same benefits your ancestors craved via convenient daily capsules from Heart and Soil. Find out more at heartandsoil.co. And remember, use code MeatEater for 10% off your purchase. There's nothing like snook hook sets at dawn or catching a tarpon in the moonlight. Find your next fishing trip made easy on fishingbooker.com and experience the magic of the Sunshine State or any other destination on your fishing bucket list. Book a blue water adventure in search of sailfish or go snapper fishing with the kids. With over 6,000 captains and trips to choose from, planning your next one just got a whole lot easier. Download the Fishing Booker app on the Google Play or App Store or visit them online at fishingbooker.com to book your trip today.
Welcome to the Wired to Hunt podcast, your home for deer hunting news, stories, and strategies. And now, your host, Mark Kenyon.
Welcome to the Wired to Hunt podcast. I'm your host, Mark Kenyon. This is episode number 174. And today in the show, we're back with another Rut Radio episode in which we're getting real-time updates from hunters across the country about current deer activity and behavior and the tactics that are working right now. All right, welcome to the Wired to Hunt podcast, brought to you by Sitka Gear. And we are back for another one of our Rut Radio episodes in which we are checking in every week throughout the 2017 hunting season, chatting with deer hunters from across the country to find out about the current deer activity, current rutting activity possibly as that starts ramping up, deer behavior, current conditions and how that's impacting deer. And we even get into the different types of tactics that people are trying right now, whether or not those are working, and then what we're expecting in the days to come. So that's the game plan for today. We've been doing this for a few weeks already this season. I've already been getting people telling me about how it's been helping them, so that's really encouraging. And it means, Spencer, you're doing a good job.
Well, thank you. That's the idea. So I hope you were getting that kind of feedback.
Yeah, absolutely. And I don't know. I know we've got a good lineup for today's episode. I don't have a whole lot to share today, unfortunately, from Michigan. As far as my report, I did hunt 4 days. I guess I do have stuff to share. It's not necessarily exciting, but look at me. I'm just like kind of going off on wild tangents. In Michigan, my Rut Radio report in Michigan was that we've had hot weather, and that led to pretty slow deer movement. And it kind of looks like that's going to be the case for like the next 2 weeks. Like our long-term forecast, for the most part, is pretty warm. There's a few little cold fronts in there that might be spikes of activity, but in general, it's kind of a dire long-term forecast for me here in southern Michigan, at least. What's going on up in your neck of the woods?
Well, I couldn't tell you because I have not been out now in quite a while. So I am not...
Oh, yeah, the great white hunter kills the giant.
That's right. I'm not accustomed to filling a tag in September, but that's what I did this year. So I do not have much intel on South Dakota. But for the rest of the country, the people I talked to this week, we have Brody Swisher in Tennessee with bowhunting.com. Then Justin Lonclo with Louisiana Bow Hunter in Louisiana. Then we have Brett Joy in New Hampshire with Parallel 43. And Ben Harshine in Iowa with Huntera Mapping. Now, all
Nice.
four of those guys kind of touched on the same two things. Right now, it's the food sources and the weather. There's been a change in the food sources. As you might expect, the oaks are becoming really popular, and that's really been suppressing deer movement as far as visible deer movement, I guess. And then the other thing is the weather. The people who give us favorable reports are like coming off of a cold front, and the people who give us poor reports are going to be going into a cold front. So you kind of have both ends of the scale there, and you'll notice that this week from Louisiana all the way to Iowa.
Interesting. Well, that certainly makes sense, and that's right in line with what I've been seeing and from what I've been hearing too. So I hope I hope that next week I'm going to have a good report for you and a good story to tell, because there is a cold front hitting tomorrow. Well, actually, when this podcast airs, it will be that day. There's a cold front hitting in Michigan. Temperatures are dropping from the day before by at least where I'm at, by 13 degrees, and it's going to be really rainy all morning and then stopping in the afternoon. And so I'm going to sneak deep into a piece of public land that I scouted this spring and try to use that wind and rain to get in there undetected and set up close to a buck bed that I found this spring. So hopefully I'm going to have a successful public land story for you next week.
Yeah, in the Midwest, that sounds exactly like what Ben Harshine just talked about. He picked out Wednesday and Sunday as 2 days in particular where the weather looks really favorable. And I think this time of year, you'd probably agree, but it's all about, playing the hand that's dealt to you. And so it's not being too aggressive if it's 85 degrees during the day. It's if you get a cold front, maybe hunting one of those better stands. But for the most part, the ideal scenario right now is probably just to hold out for another, week or two until we hit better pre-rut or until, better weather comes.
Yeah, I 100% agree. Or, if you lots of people can only hunt when they got the time to hunt. And so what I always recommend is if it's poor conditions, but you still want to hunt, just go to a piece of public land that you're not worried about messing up, or if you've got several different pieces of ground you can hunt and there's one that you're not really expecting to try to target a buck, go there and hunt for some does, or just go enjoy a nice night in the woods. But don't go mucking up your best stuff if you don't have, the right factors, the right conditions that could make it, higher odds.
Exactly. Well, hopefully you'll be listening to this on Wednesday and somebody will have, a great hunt to report on like we talk about in the episode.
I think that's a good plan. I hope that happens for everybody out there. So, Spencer, I will let you take it from here.
All right. Talk to you next week, Mark.
Thanks, man.
Before we get to our first update, though, let's pause to thank our sponsors at Sitka Gear. For this week's Sitka story, we're joined by Sitka Ambassador Jess DeLorenzo, who tells us about harvesting her first Merriam's turkey.
So we headed out to Nebraska, myself and my media partner, Jake Latondras, and we were hunting with Prairie Rock Outfitters out there. This was my first time archery hunting for a Merriam's bird. I hadn't had one on my list yet. So it was kind of a combination of a big game hunt and big game terrain mixed with turkey hunting, which was really exciting. We had spotted a couple toms and tried to call them in, and it was just not happening. And finally one night we found a roost tree and set up nearby, and the action was just incredible. There were so many birds coming in, and I was able to get a shot off on one of the nicest toms that came in, and he played with the decoys, and we got some great footage, and I put a really nice shot on him, and then we just ended the night with the sun setting in the Wildcat Hills of Nebraska with my first Merriam's bird, which was super, super exciting.
On Jess's hunt, she was wearing Sitka's sub-alpine camo in the women's line. If you'd like to create a Sitka story of your own and to learn more about Sitka's technical hunting apparel, visit sitkagear.com. Okay, and joining us on the line first this week is Brody Swisher, the editor of bowhunting.com. Now, Brody, in Tennessee, what would you say the deer activity has been lately on a scale of 1 to 10?
Scale of 1 to 10, I would say we're probably in that. I'm going to say 5, honestly. Just with the transition, what we're seeing right now, call it the lull, call it just, in my mind, again, it's just that transition period. We've had these bean fields have yellowed out for the most part, and so we're seeing that transition from the deer in the fields hammering the beans to now all of a sudden disappeared, and so those guys continue to sit there and cry the tears about the lull, but those deer, honestly, they're just transitioning. We're seeing that activity that was out and visible from the optics and sitting there watching fields and the post positions out there. Now all of a sudden they're not there, and they're just kind of slipping off. And it's for our area, our neck of the woods, it's white oaks dropping, hitting the ground. They've not disappeared. They're not laying low. It's just they've moved on to food source. And so the visibility wise, it's gotten tough. Yeah, we're in our second week of season now, going into our third week, I guess now. And that first couple of weeks, we were seeing the bucks still batched up, and tolerating each other, and then the velvet came off, and all of a sudden they're just a different creature, and we began to see less and less of the big bucks, and those little bucks are what we're seeing now out in the open, and the big bucks have sleeked off a little bit, holding tighter to cover. So the activity, yeah, it's definitely backed off in the last 2 weeks since opening day. I'd say it's in that 5 to 6 range as far as activity, but it's just a matter of getting in there tighter to cover and finding that food source that they're hitting right now.
Well, Brody, how aggressive do you think hunters should be in that area then, if they need to get a little deeper in the woods?
Yeah, man, I think to me, it really goes on what they're finding from those trail cameras, and I hate to get so locked into, relying on the trail camera, but man, it is. It's that recon. It's that most, recent information telling you what they're doing right now. And the guy that's got that and that intel and can say, hey, you know what, these deer are on this consistent pattern here, they can be a little more aggressive, But I think a lot of guys think, oh man, they're not in the bean fields, they're not out in the corn stubble, they've got to be off in the timber. They just take off blindly, looking for that needle in a haystack and take off through the timber. And I think they can do a lot of damage real quick when they just throw all regard to the wind out the window and just take off in that cover. But again, going back to those trail cameras, that to me tells me I can be a little more aggressive. I know they're coming in and out here. They're using this food source here, and then therefore you can play that wind. But the guy that just takes off, gets aggressive with no regard to wind direction and how they approach those timber food sources, I think does a lot more harm than good. I still like to play a little safe, at this time of season, early to mid-October, unless I know I've got that timber food source, those acorns where I know I can get in, slip into cover, and not bust out. I'm going to play a little more safe and back off. Again, if I know exactly through trail cameras where I know those deer are doing, how they're hanging out, and I can get around that food source in the timber or that bedding area in the timber, not blow them out with the wind, then I'll get more aggressive. And it's a great tactic early season, But a lot of that, again, goes back to what you're seeing on that trail camera, that information you're getting, and just being able to get in and out without busting that cover and blowing them out too quick in the season. A lot of guys do that very thing and wonder where the deer went, but they've again just disregarded any of their wind directions and just put too much pressure too quick on that particular deer herd.
Now, are you personally hunting any mornings yet, or are you still strictly hunting evenings?
Yeah, I've got a couple places that I'll catch. My personal property here is 50 acres that I live on. It's just a little tract. Mostly timber, and it's just a perfect funnel between ag country across the road, ag fields across the road, and then a big bottom on the back end. So it's just a perfect funnel for deer, and I can slip in, catch them coming back across the road. And so I'll hit some mornings around here, and that's how, it's honestly been slow. We've had beans that yelled out quick across the road, and we just not had the activity in the morning. So afternoons have honestly been where the activity's been for me. Very little action in the mornings, very little, seeing very little in the morning. So it's definitely been, thus far, it's been afternoon hunts and in those ag fields. And again, that's changing right now. I just hunted a corn stubble field the other night, and the deer have been there. It was adjacent to a bean field that they've been in real hard the first 2 weeks. And then, again, this cornfield got cut, and a lot of corn on the ground in that cornfield. Just going through the other night looking, and so there's been deer in that field every night last couple nights, and so that's kind of where I've shifted gears, coming off that yellowed out bean field, going in that corn stubble, and then again just trying to pick off some spots where I can slip into the timber and playing the wind and doing it right and get in the timber and try to get close to those white oak food sources. That's where they're between the corn stubble and white oaks. That's really where I'm seeing the activity right now.
Well, going forward in this next week or so, what do you think the deer activity is going to be then in Tennessee?
I think guys, we are finally getting the first, I don't want to even say cold snap because it's not cold snap, but it's going from 88 degrees we had yesterday. Tomorrow it's going to be down in the low 70s, I believe, for the high. And so we're finally getting some of that cooler weather that I anticipate will help out. I mean, we've had deer in a lot of situations. On my trail cams, I'm seeing deer running the night shift. Just almost doing the nocturnal thing, and a lot of that I think is just hot. A lot of that I think is because guys hammered it out the first week this season and put them that pressure and bumped them back. But I really look to see some of that activity picking up, some cooler weather, and food sources getting concentrating those deer a little better. You get bean fields and corn fields and all the food sources at one time. Some white oaks dropping, persimmons, and there's so much food. Oftentimes those deer don't have to go far, and the beans yellow out, and the corn gets picked, and some of those persimmons run out, and it just gets to where now you can start to concentrate. Food sources are definitely more concentrating for those deer, and you can start picking away at those hot spots and where they are now instead of just a smorgasbord of food for them out there. So I think we're definitely going to see that this next week, is again with cooler temperatures, and then just as we ramp up towards the pre-rut. So based on the cooler temperatures and concentration on food sources, I think we're going to be looking this next week or two, bumping up to that 7 out of 10 as far as deer activity here in West Tennessee.
All right, well, thanks for joining me this week, Brody. I look forward to talking to you on later in the season.
Thanks, Spencer. Appreciate your time.
All right, and joining us on the line next is the founder of LouisianaBowhunter.com, Justin Lonclo. Now, Justin, in Louisiana, what would you say the deer activity has been lately on a scale of 1 to 10?
I'd give it about a 6.5. We've had some extremely high temperatures here lately with the heat index in triple digits. It's been extremely dry for about the past 6 weeks, and deer just aren't moving a whole lot during the day right now.
Now, you are located where at in Louisiana, Justin? What would you say the deer activity has been like in the rest of the state beyond your reach?
I'm in southwest Louisiana. Now, in the rest of the state, a lot of the deer are still on their summer patterns. So some guys have been having some pretty good luck catching some big bucks that are still moving on their same summer patterns, going back and forth between feed and bedding.
Now, what do the summer patterns look like in Louisiana as far as what bedding is and what food is?
For the bucks, the food is going to be usually cutovers of some sort. Most of our area consists of logging company property. So you've got fresh cutovers. They're going to have a lot of browse. The bucks will tend to hang out in that and eat there as well. Now, it's been extremely dry the past few weeks, so the acorns have started to drop prematurely, and those are really good areas to key on as well.
So besides those summer patterns, are you seeing some rutting activity in the state?
Yes, absolutely. In my area, I've noticed the tarsal glands starting to get dark. Louisiana has a pretty interesting story. It was restocked back in the 60s with deer as far away as from Wisconsin. So you can hunt the rut pretty much at any point between September and February. The southwest part of the state where I'm at, the deer will be starting to rut heavy literally any day.
Are you seeing a lot of rut sign as far as scrapes and rubs right now?
I'm not seeing, I haven't seen any scrapes or rubs in my area yet. I have seen some guys from other parts of the state reporting scrapes and rubs. Like I said, the only rut activity I've seen is in my area, the bachelor groups have split up. I was watching one group of about 6 bucks. They split up about a month ago. And I have noticed that their tarsal glands are getting dark as well. I've also noticed that the does have kicked out their. I've been watching a doe that's got a set of twin fawns, and she's no longer with them. So I assume she's going to be going into estrus here pretty soon.
Well, what does a typical setup look like for you this time of year? Are you hunting mornings or more evenings?
It's pretty much mornings right now, just because it's coolest. The heat index is up over 100 in the evenings, and some of my morning activity has been later morning. So I've been able to get in and take advantage of the slightly cooler weather in the mornings. It's just too hot and too many mosquitoes right now for me at this point. We do have a cold front coming through. Actually, right now it's raining, and going to have some much cooler temperatures here over the next few days.
Well, speaking of that cold front, do you think that's going to change the deer activity this next week or so? And what do you think that's going to look like on a scale of 1 to 10?
Definitely. The weather change is one of the most effective things to hunt, especially here in Louisiana. Cold fronts here can be drastic. We can go from being in the 80s and the 90s to being in the 30s or 40s within a 24-hour period. I'd like to think in my area it's going to bump it up to a 7 or an 8. As far as the rest of the state goes, it'll bump it up as well. The cooler the temperatures, the more the deer are going to be on their feet, especially during the daytime.
Okay, Justin. Well, I hope you're able to take advantage of that cold front, and good luck this year.
Thanks a lot. Appreciate it.
Before we get to our next call, let's stop to thank our sponsors at Whitetail Properties. And this week with Whitetail Properties, we are joined by Brandon Swartzlander, a land specialist out of Illinois. And Brandon is going to be telling us about what to look for when buying a property as a non-resident.
I think most importantly, at first you need to identify what it is that you're looking for in terms of whether it be investment, recreation, hunting, what you can afford, what you can't afford. And then I think the second piece of that would be to seek out some local knowledge, and whether that's, a certified land specialist or someone who really understands what's happening in that world. And I think there are great residential agents, and there are great land specialists who and I think that there's certainly a difference between what they do and what they represent. But most importantly, it's just trying to identify what it is that you want. Lots of people come and they say, well, I think I want to spend this amount, or I want to have this many acreage, and you just have to try and marry up those two. But again, I think most importantly, it just falls back to finding someone who understands what it is in a given area. I mean, just take Illinois, for example. That's a huge state. So it really varies from what happens in the north, from what happens in the south, as far as how land goes. Price is different. Geography is different. So I think that's probably the best key, is to have someone who really understands those and can help you find what you're looking for.
If you'd like to learn more and to see the properties that Brandon currently has listed for sale, visit whitetailproperties.com/Swartzlander. That's SWARTZLANDER. All right, and joining us on the line next is host of Parallel 43 in New Hampshire, Brett Joy. Now, Brett, what would you say the deer activity has been lately on a scale of 1 to 10?
I would say it's been a 2 or 3, if I had to guess. I think it's probably pretty difficult to get down to a 1, but it's been pretty poor, so I'd go with a 2 or 3 right now.
Why such a poor number? Is that something that is typical for early October for you guys, or is this abnormal?
I'd say it's more typical than abnormal. The reason that it's typical is because at least the last 5 or 6 years have had an exceptional mass crop, specifically red oaks in the areas that we hunt, and that really subdues deer movement. They don't have to move far to get food. Typically our bedding and feeding, since we're in a heavily timbered area, is one and the same pretty much. So they're just getting up off their belly, moving 10 yards, eating acorns and lying back down. So that's pretty typical of late September, early October in New Hampshire. But the thing that's really subduing the movement on top of the mass crop is the weather. The weather has been above average, I think, most of the deer season so far, the first 5 or 6 weeks that it's been open. So they just aren't moving far. That with the mass crop, it makes for really tough hunting and really kind of poor deer activity.
Now, how aggressive have you been then if, it's that tough to get close to deer right now?
I personally haven't been that aggressive. I haven't been hunting much. I've been monitoring trail cameras. I think there's two schools of thought on this. One is to monitor your cameras, wait for a cold front until you start getting more daylight buck activity, and then move in. Or you can get aggressive early, hunt a bunch of different spots, hunt bedding areas essentially. I've chose the first option just because I have one deer in particular I'm hunting now, and I don't think he's going anywhere, so I just don't want to push the envelope too early in the season. So right now I'm waiting on a cold front, and I'm going to go from there.
Hypothetically speaking, in that area, what if you had food plots or a different food source? Would the deer potentially be hitting that, or do you think it's just acorns across the board right now?
No, there's definitely some variety. They're not going to eat, only oaks, but it is definitely the number one thing they're keying in on. I have some food plots up here as well. I am getting pictures of some mature bucks on food plots, but it's middle of the night, so I think that's kind of an afterthought at this point. It seems like right after, the third week in September through the middle of October, red and white oaks are the number one food source. So that's going to be what you can focus on. I mean, you could definitely probably kill a buck on a food plot or a green field or maybe in a cut. But I think that's more of the exception than the rule at this time of year.
Well, are you seeing any scrapes or rubs? You just talked about trail cameras a little bit. Where are those located at?
Yeah, I have actually. I actually did some scouting yesterday, and I found some fresh rubs and scrapes in an area that I was hoping to see them in. So yeah, most of my cameras this time of year are definitely on scrapes, either scrapes the deer have made themselves or mock scrapes. And I am starting to see that activity. I think that the warm weather has probably suppressed that a little more than normal. I usually see a little more than I am right now, but I think the next cold front should really ramp up that activity, should get those deer moving, a little more at night out exploring, whereas they just aren't going far right now.
Now, going forward in this next week or so, what do you think the buck activity is going to be like then on a scale of 1 to 10?
I think it's probably going to be, I'd say it could get up to a 6 or 7. We have a cold front that's supposed to come in the middle of this week. Well, I say cold front. It's really just a cool front. It's only a few degrees below probably our seasonal average for this time of year. But since we've been in the 70s and 80s these last 3-4 weeks, I'd say it's going to get them on the feet. So I'd say it's going to be pretty good. The only thing that's keeping it obviously from being a little higher than that, maybe like a 8 to 10 would probably be the mass crop. That's still going to play a big factor and subdue their movement to an extent. So,
all right, Brett. Well, thanks for joining me. Look forward to checking out Parallel 43 on Carbon TV. Good luck this year.
Thanks, Spencer. You too.
All right, and joining us on the line last is Ben Harshine, the founder of Huntera Mapping and a land specialist for Whitetail Properties. Now, Ben, in Iowa, what would you say the deer activity has been lately on a scale of 1 to 10?
I would say with these different weather patterns and some cooler weather and some change coming in, you can be having some 6, 7, or 8s, I would say. You can have some really good sits. Everything else in between, this warm weather, it's notorious for early October. I would say, you're down at your 2s or 3s. I think it's, I don't want to say a waste of time, but you're hurting yourself unless you're hunting these weather fronts that are coming through. Specifically, what I like in the next 10 days, we've had historically some really warm weather that is setting up any sort of precipitation or cool weather or a change in wind direction is interesting to me. I'll be out tomorrow night. We're basically getting a lot of rain right now, and we're going to get a strong northeast wind tomorrow, dying down as far as the wind speed around prime time. So I'll definitely be out tomorrow night, which would be Wednesday, and then the next weather that looks good to me would be Sunday. So I know that what guys are seeing right now is a lot of there's just a ton of acorns. It's a huge mass crop this year, at least in the heartland, and that can be preventing a lot of trail cam pictures of deer that you maybe expect should be there. Not a ton of movement, but the guys that are hunting food is either seeing deer on acorns or green plots in the evening.
All right, well, Wednesday and Sunday, put it on the calendars, Iowa listeners. But Ben, you were talking about the weather front making those couple days so good. So far in October, have you gotten a chance to take advantage of some of those weather fronts?
Let's see here. I've only got one sit in. That would have been last Wednesday, I believe. I really wanted to get out on Saturday. Last Saturday was, I believe, the best sit of the season so far for here in Iowa. I had a number of different clients that I've been in contact with and some friends as well. Saturday looked really good as far as how the weather was really stagnant and stale and warm all the way up into a bunch of rain Saturday morning. Things cooled off and some really heavy winds throughout the day leading into prime time where those winds dropped down to 15 to 10, put a bunch of deer in front of people. I had really everybody that sat that night that I know saw bucks. Two of them killed, 2 of my contacts killed, and other ones saw mature deer out in the field. So that was just a classic. That was a classic scenario of this warm weather setting up for a cold front to come through, or some precipitation, or just some drastic change in direction of wind or whatnot. That was a really low pressure day, but deer were still out hot and heavy. So that's what I'm looking for in early to mid-October.
Now, with that good deer movement that some of your contacts saw, do you know if they were seeing any rutting activity yet, as far as scrapes, rubs, sparring, any stuff like that?
Yeah, we're pre-rut. Pre-rut's not even the term yet. We're before that, but the beginning signs of some scrapes popping, especially with this rain that's coming through. I would imagine they're going to be a lot more visible, and they'll be scratching the ground a lot more here in the coming days. My specific property, as of last week, just started to have a couple scrapes show up, but on the other hand, I've talked to guys that have been seeing scrapes prevalent throughout, and some bigger ones where they're at. So I would say that it's going to be about that time where more and more rubs are going to be showing up, more and larger scrapes will be showing up, and when you get some cooler evenings, you're going to see at least some of the younger deer coming out and sniffing around some of these does in addition to grabbing a bite to eat, but still too early to be talking pre-rut yet.
Well, it sounds like you like the forecast coming up. What would you say the deer activity in Iowa there is going to be on a scale of 1 to 10 in this next week or so?
Well, I would say I'm going to say Wednesday night is going to be. I'll just shoot and say it's going to be a 7. We'll go for a 7. I'm not really putting anything up towards a 8, 9, or 10, until we get closer to the end of October. But I would say you're looking at a 7 on 7 or an 8 on Wednesday, and then Sunday as well. You got some warm weather leading into showers, and then some pressure that'll be rising Sunday into Monday. So let's put those at a 7 as well.
All right, Ben. Well, good luck on those sits, and look forward to talking to you later this fall.
Okay, thanks a lot.
And that's going to be it, folks. And as you heard Ben say, and a few other people, we got that cold front coming across some of the Midwest right now. I know it's hitting for me today, Wednesday, as this podcast is dropping. So in just a matter of hours, I'm going to be sneaking out into some public land. Fingers are crossed. And good luck to any of you that are going to be hunting this week or weekend. Hope it goes well for you. So that said, I want to give a big thank you to our partners at Sitka Gear, Yeti Coolers, Matthews Archery, Maven Optics, the Whitetail Institute of North America, Trophy Ridge, and Huntera Maps. And finally, of course, thank you for listening. Thanks for taking some time out of your busy day to tune into the Wired Hunt podcast. We appreciate it. And like I said earlier, if you're hitting the woods, good luck and stay wired to hunt.
I'm sure a lot of you guys remember the old ceremonial hunting tradition of eating the heart out of the first animal you kill. Meat from those organs are among the most nutrient-rich foods on the planet. You can get those same benefits your ancestors craved via convenient daily capsules from Heart and Soil. Find out more at heartandsoil.co. And remember, use code MeatEater for 10% off your purchase. You ever get that feeling the walls closing in, the concrete jungle suffocating you? You crave some wide open spaces, the chance to connect with nature, maybe in a spot all your own. Well, head over to land.com. They've got ranches, forests, mountains, streams, you name it. Search by acreage. You can search by location. You can search by the kind of hunting and fishing you're dreaming of. Land.com. It is where the adventure begins.